Hey.
Zhushko, you asked something the last session,
Yes.
writing something and we don't know what did you ask. Did you ask something from the group?
I don't know.
No, from Dagna, I was asking about this transformation stuff. Is it clear?
Hello, Sandra.
Hello.
So just welcome. Just before you start, I just want to tell about the structure again for us to, because the last session was a bit different. The idea is that you talk alone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then after we can have a bit of space to write some questions. And you keep talking, but based on these questions also. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this it? This is the whole group, or we are waiting more people?
Yeah, no, it's the whole group.
Cool. Yeah, maybe just if you can mute, great, because there was some sound coming out, so great. Okay, so because I really invite you for this to be as informal as possible. So at any stage, please feel free to interrupt me and ask a question. I just had two sessions and they're both very different. So I'm very happy to answer any questions that you have and that are relevant for you. So my name is Sandra, and I am a trainer. I work mainly with embodied learning principles, and that's my main topic. And I work mainly in the Erasmus Plus world, which is now not sure how much it exists. We are trying to move our work online, and it's not so easy. Yeah, but that's my main topic, embodied learning. I'm also a youth worker, so that means that I have spent a lot of years working directly with young people, supporting them and building communities. So yeah, that's the work that I did before. And I mainly worked with LGBT young people, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, which is still one of the most vulnerable groups that exist, I think, in any part of the world. And so the resilience part, building resilient young people and resilient communities was a big part of the work that I did. At the moment, I also work for the Embodiment Conference. I don't know if you have heard about it, but it's an event that's free, that's happening online in October. It's for 10 days, and it's going to bring together over 1,000 speakers from various disciplines, so from trauma, coaching, social change, dance, movement, martial arts, mindfulness, breathing. So very, very big names. I don't know how much you know, but yeah, I think I was already asked to share the links about it. So I'm gonna send this to Susanna and she can share it in the group. But yeah, Embodiment Conference, and there is also a podcast I did on embodied learning, where I share a bit more about my personal journey with embodiment and my personal story and how did I end up in this world of embodiment. So you can listen to that, or you can ask me. But that's the work that I do. I'm also a dancer, so which, yeah, I know. I practice, my main embodiment practice is contact improvisation. I don't know how much you know about it, but it's a partner dance that's based on improvisation and contact. So yeah, physical touch is a big aspect of it, which is very hard to do now in this crisis time. But that's the work that I do. I'm here yet to talk about embodied learning. I'm sure that you have heard about this word a lot lately. I feel like wherever I turn, there is something about embodiment, or maybe it's just the world that I exist within. But that word seems to be coming, yeah, back and back. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, I am living in Ireland at the moment, but I'm from Balkan area. But I have been living in Ireland for the last 8 years, which means that English is my first language now. That also means that I speak sometimes really fast. So if that happens, and if you have troubles following me, just give me some kind of a sign and I will slow down. But yes, I was called here to talk about embodied learning. I think Susanna Silva and I met last year, I think September, in one of the multiplier events where we were both invited to participate. First, I think Erasmus Plus project that has dealt specifically with the embodiment and embodied learning. And I think they still offer Introduction to Embodied Learning online course. So I invite you to look at that as well if you have time and desire, and if that's something of interest to you. But yes, I was teaching their contact improvisation actually. So that's where Susanna and I met, and she invited me to come and speak to you about embodied learning. So what is embodied learning actually? Embodied learning or embodiment is like, it's a term that we use to describe a lot of different things, and that's okay. We don't say, oh no, you cannot use embodiment to describe this or that. So we use it to describe a set of different disciplines, and you will see maybe in my chat why we do that. But embodied learning specifically, what is it? It's approach to learning that really focuses on using the body in the learning process. We see the body as a source of information, and the place of change in the embodied learning. So that's the most important part. The focus of the embodied learning or the learning is one of those holistic approaches. So for a really long time, learning was all about cognitive stuff and understanding everything on the mind level. So you will also see that in, I don't know, Erasmus Plus world, a lot of topics around human rights, democracy, or leadership, or I don't know, these topics that are still very relevant, but very much were based on sitting around in a circle and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking about it. Which is like, okay, some parts of talking are relevant and they need to happen, but what is the learning offers that the next step? Okay, like, okay, so what can we do with all this information and the knowledge that we all have? So in embodied learning, we try to understand how can body and mind act together to support the learning. In embodied learning, yes, so we try to use the body to understand what are the relationships that I have, firstly with myself, okay, and then, or different aspects of myself, and then relationships that I have with the people who are around me, so my immediate surroundings, so my friends or my colleagues or something like that. But also we can use embodied learning and body to understand what is the relationship that I have with the world as a whole. Okay, so we're not just staying in this bubble of here and now, but also try to understand how do I relate to the whole world. There's a lot of animals flying around me. What is specific about embodied learning is that we learn by doing. So it's very, very experiential, and it's in that regard it's very similar to non-formal learning. But in non-formal learning we have different methods and different focus. So in embodied learning we specifically use the body as a starting point, and things in embodied learning, and that's awareness and choice. So we always start with, okay, how, who I am in this moment, in right this moment now. It can be at 10:35, sitting here with you in this Zoom room, or it can be also understanding who I am through the process of time, so understanding my patterns and habits. But it's really about the awareness. And then the second part is choice. Embodied disciplines to develop myself, explore myself and develop myself using the body. So that means that we are building through embodied learning, we are building not only the awareness, but we are building the range of responses to different situations. And this is the resilience part, okay? Which means that, I don't know, if you had some kind of traumatic experience, it's most likely your body remembers, your body and brain, everything remembers. Most likely next time you're faced with similar traumatic situation or stressful situation, you will react in the same way. But through embodied learning and embodied practices, we can develop new responses to similar situations. So in that way, you're building much more functional and much more healthier relationships and responses to the situations that you have. That we have in these burnout situations or stressful situations, we're like, oh, I don't know what to do, or I don't know, how can I help myself? You know, like, I don't know. And you're kind of that sense of being stuck, or, you know, your hands being tied or not being able to move. With the embodied learning, we try to develop this range of responses to different situations. So it's really about developing qualities within yourself and developing who you are through the body, using the body. Yes, this is where I want to finish as like this basic introduction. And I'm very happy now maybe to take your questions and maybe focus more on the topics that are relevant to you. Yeah, so anyone who has questions, feel free to ask. Zsuzsa, go. Zsuzsa.
Yes, what I really called my attention is that you said that you have a choice for in terms of response for the same situation. That's okay, and this is what you connected to resilience. So I'm just wondering that if so you can kind of train train yourself or develop yourself through your body to react differently. I understood that, but what can you do for it, or how can you do that? How does it look like in the practice?
So there's different disciplines in embodied learning. So it can be from mindfulness to movement practice, and movement practice and it can be also performance art, for example. So it can be theater or it can be dance. But I suppose for me, the most useful part about embodied learning is this process of self-regulation. Okay, so being emotionally literal, yeah, so having this emotional literacy, understanding your emotions, but also understanding how your body responds in certain situations. And in embodied learning, this big part is not being reactive, but choosing the response. And the choosing the response only comes from this place of knowing how can you respond. And we build that through, let's say, for example, I do that through theater. You know, I use theater practices to do that, or I use contact improvisation to develop responses. But the first part I suppose would be self-regulation. For example, you know, if you're in a stressful situation, your breath is going to be here. Your body is going to shake. So the first step would be, okay, connect, not to get overwhelmed in this situation. How can you use your body posture to calm down, or, you know, self-regulate? So that would be like, put your feet on the ground. As long as you fit your feet on the ground, or your bum sitting on the chair, that's already the process of self-regulation. And then is, what can I do with this? So again, you can use a variety of disciplines, but in non-formal education places, I use theater and I use dance. Sometimes I use creative writing process, depending, again, which quality I want to do. So in contact improvisation, it can be like, what is the quality that you want to develop? What is the response? What is the quality that you don't have? I, for example, don't have spontaneity. I always get freezed. So it's all about, okay, see the situation and going into the situation, going with the flow, or listening to someone. And so in the theater is the same, especially in improvisation theater. You're trying new things that you wouldn't normally try. You're trying the behavior that you wouldn't normally try. So I could be very, if I'm very stage fright, if I have a stage fright, or if I'm scared of being seen or being exposed, or anyone pointing at me creates some kind of reaction in my body, I can also choose the theater space to pretend that I'm someone else, to develop a certain quality that I don't normally have. So it's kind of building new response. So again, I work with theater and dance as methods, but depending on your choice or your preference or the tools that you like, disciplines that you like, you can use that. You can use different disciplines to develop these responses, these qualities. I'm not sure if that answers your question. It's again, it's working within the moment, working on a training course that's all about self-care. You know, so I try to use in theater or nature-based activities to understand what is my relationship to the self-care and what do I go for, you know, and is there something else that can support my self-care and being more kind to myself and having more compassion. So if your self-care practice is bubble baths and chocolate, I will offer you walking, or I will offer you drawing, or I will offer you writing, and then you will see what works for you, what works for your nature, what works for your character. I am someone who is very intense, so I tend to go for intense disciplines or intense practices because I have so much energy and a very busy brain. So I need a lot of physical movement for my brain to shut down, or, you know, for my brain not to get overwhelmed. But I also need to develop breathing qualities and mindfulness because then there is no rejuvenating. So it's really about understanding what quality do you want to develop and what do you need. So then choosing the discipline, then choosing the method, and then choosing the tools. Very welcome.
If no one else has a question, I have a question.
Go first.
Okay, it's a okay. So, okay, just like since you work in the Erasmus Plus context, that is a kind of training context, and then actually, okay, and then this kind of what you are representing now, this embodied learning, can bring participants very easily out of the training context that maybe it's a therapeutic context, because it's just also as the way how I hear you, I'm already busy with my deepest things. And then how can you integrate or find the frames and the borders in what you provide? For example, in that training course, maybe it's within Erasmus Plus that you mentioned about self-care and this kind of stuff, or were you busy with this ever, or how is it like that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, every time you use movement or body-based activities, it can easily go into therapeutic stuff because you're working with every aspect of yourself. And very often, I think especially with the youth workers, it can be really challenging because we are all overworked. We all work with vulnerable groups, so that means that we work a lot with the personal stories of young people. And the whole is to also training is also to understand that every youth worker, or every trainer, or every person in the support role is also a human being, and we cannot overwork these people. And it's also for us in the self-care process, training is all about developing the boundaries, learning to say no and learning to say yes. Yes, so building kind of resilience, but also confidence. We never, I mean, it is very, of course, you will see a lot of people crying, you will see a lot of deep processes being moved and triggered, but it's fine line. So I mean, we believe that every person, or I try to develop a practice of learning spaces where everyone is responsible for themselves and they know how far they can go. I'm in a that can support the learning that is safe, you know, so that doesn't go into the therapy, so it doesn't go into the trauma healing. I mean, I finished psychology, so for me, it's kind of easy. You know, I understand how to work with these processes, but often co-trainers don't have those skills. So, so at the beginning of setting the framework, it's very important to have being very verbally honest that you're responsible for the choices that you make in this training, that you're responsible how deep you want to go with these processes, and also being really honest in saying, this is not therapy, okay? This is not a therapy. If there is a therapy, if there is this overwhelming, we had recently, actually, I think not recently, but the last training I did, we were doing the theater of the oppressed, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the theater of the oppressed, but yeah, there you know, you play situations, live situations without a voice, so just using the body. And kind of then you're inviting participants to intervene in these situations. And because we were working with the LGBT group, a lot of stories were very, very heavy and very intense and emotionally demanding. And we ended up with 20 participants crying, you know, they were all triggered. I wasn't leading the activity, so I mean, I was like, I mean, I would never go there. However, and this has happened, and I was like, okay, what do we do with this? You know, it is there, it is alive. Clearly needs to come up, you know. Then what happens is you use the body to get them out of that, you know. So you never leave the people in this emotionally distressed space, but you use body to bring people back to this not overwhelming state, a safe state of balance, and then you can have the reflection part or the evaluation part or the debrief part to understand what has happened. So it's a cycle, you know. With embodied learning, it's a cycle. You're bringing people to certain place, but you never leave them there. You always bring them back to the state of equilibrium or balance. And because we all work with personal stories, yeah, it can be very. As soon as something happens, and let's say people are being triggered or people are sharing or being overwhelmed, there is an activity or method or tool that offers kind of getting people out of there and therefore building a new response. So, and that's why I like embodied learning, you know, because for this, there's always that. And so it's never, yeah, you never leave people in this space of just exploration. You always try to get them out of that as well. And using the words, like we in embodied learning, having this operational language is really, really important. So how do you say certain things, in what way, when, how? This is also a set of skills, you know. So you never say, I want you to, like, I invite you, you know, it's your body, it's not our body. So it's very, it's a set of skills that you need to develop as well.
Just to say, we have more 5 minutes. Can I ask a question? I'm thinking here how it is for you to start a process with a group who was not working with embodied learning before. Like, I'm thinking more you as a youth worker. If for you, if you feel it is accessible, I don't know how to explain how it is the the starting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not easy, but at the same time, it is easy. So in that case, when I was working as a youth worker and I started introducing embodied learning, I started introducing a movement first. And I tried to use activities that young people were naturally drawn to. So that means that we used a lot of like PlayStation games or Xbox games, you know, Dance It Out or whatever dance competition thing. So just to kind of normalize or usualize the movement as a thing, being active physically in the youth spaces. So trying really to find something that young people are already doing to just start introducing, yeah, the body in the youth spaces. And then, you know, once you have them on this dance floor, you know, virtual dance floor, then you can start asking questions. So it's a lot about introducing the embodied learning into youth spaces is about developing relationships and building the trust. Which is also culturally very specific. I work in Ireland where people never are face to face like us. It's always like shoulder to shoulder. So I had to be very creative in how do I connect with young people in this way. So that's what we did. Then we were just, very often we were just starting to throw a ball, you know, like in the space, again, just to introduce this body activity. And then, you know, it takes time. After that, we started going for walks, you know, and I think walking is one of the best embodied activities because it's simple, because it's accessible, because it's not really embodied learning, but it is embodied learning if you use it as embodied learning. So in walking, which is normal, you know, everyone does it, or you know, even people in the wheelchair, you know, you can still have them walking with you somewhere. Then you can start asking questions like, okay, how are you? Or, you know, having like what I suppose most of you know, it's called empathy walk, you know, asking people to share their stories or their opinions on certain questions. So this walking can be used as building a relationship activity, or, you know, developing empathy or developing compassion or developing listening. So but it's not as intense, and body is there, so it's happening in that way. So yeah, and then after that, we did a lot like with Dixit cards. You know, Dixit cards are amazing. You know, so it's not necessarily all about just kind of the movement. If we look about first part of the embodied learning is, you know, awareness. It's sometimes very hard for the young people to understand or express how they feel or how they, you know, think about their body. But if you use Dixit cards or any kind of cards as a tool, then they can start developing that awareness a bit more. So then you can ask them how you are or who you are, and then who you want to be, you know, and then as soon as you ask who you want to be, you open this new possibility of being. So there's different ways. I suppose knowing your group, knowing your youth helps. In Ireland, we used to have a lot of like this outdoor activities. So we would, you know, bring young people to this outdoor adventure centers, and then there you're also developing trust. You're developing communication skills or teamwork, depending what quality you want to develop. But that's how something I did. Yeah.
Thank you. Super interesting for me. Really.
Very welcome.
I think we have to go.
Yes.
But we have time after to talk more.
We could listen you more and more and more and more.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I will share again. I will share the podcast as well that I was. There's also share, yeah, some activities there, and yeah. Well, you're all welcome at any embodiment conference event that are happening between now and the end of the year. But yes, let's have a break, and then I will see you in the sharing circle. Thank you all. Bye.
So now this was the last, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Now, wait, what time is it? 11. Now we have 30 minutes we have a break of 30 minutes, and at 11:30 we come back to
The big circle.
to questions, to have questions. Just let me see if, I'm not sure if we come back in the same, yeah, we come back in the same link at 11:30.
So it's just a small sharing, like with this group.
Yes, it is with the same group, but we have some questions. We will pass again with all of the experts, but with a question, with a reflection question. We talk, yeah, it's not with the big group yet.
Okay.
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 Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, good break.